Okay, so it looks like we're good to go. Hello, everybody. TisNessie here, or just Nessie, I guess, for the series. I am Nessie. Oh my god. Great start here. Welcome to the voices you have read. I was about to say I'm Nessie again, but I'm sure you already know that. Okay, so before we get started, I wanted to say happy birthday, Jacob Black, and my still fictional husband. I love him still as much as I did when I read New Moon, and forever and always, he is amazing. All right, so today I thought for Jacob's birthday, because yesterday we read Midnight Sun. If you haven't watched that video yet, or if you are interested in listen or watching listening to that, I apologize. My guitar is off on the side, and Midnight Sun has been holding it up since yesterday. So now I gotta put this down. There we go. So yesterday we read Midnight Sun, or at least the first chapter of Midnight Sun. It was a little bit more conversational because it was my first time reading it, and etc. etc. So if you guys want to check that out, I have a playlist of all the voices I have read, or the voices you have read, videos already out on a playlist. So go ahead and check that out. I'll put the link down below or in the iCard. I guess it would be over here or over here. I'm not sure. I'm not sure which one it would be, but it'll show up at some point. And today, in honor of Mr. Jacob Black, Jacob Ephraim Black, we are reading chapter 2 of Twilight. Although it would be a bit more appropriate to read New Moon, we haven't gotten to New Moon yet. We still got to read Twilight. So I figured, you know what? Even though we did read Midnight Sun yesterday, let's read Twilight today. It was either that or we read Midnight Sun today. And I don't think that would be very appreciative of Jacob if we did that to him. So this is my logic here. So yeah, feel free to chat in the chat box if you are here while I'm streaming. It looks like there is one person here, but sometimes it tells me that and there actually is nobody, and it's just me who's watching. So for some reason it counts me sometimes. But feel free to chat in the chat box. I may not respond because I am busy reading. What else did I have to say about this? I always have like a little script or something here just about this kind of thing. Yeah, so also make sure that you guys hit that like button if you want to see more videos like this, because because it really helps me out. Believe it or not, YouTube and the algorithm responds to people liking videos, and that literally takes less than a second to do. So if you can, please give this video a like. And once again, I don't make any money off of this series. This is just something that I do purely for fun. I think that's all I had to say. So, but if you do want to support me, I am doing an audio drama, but how do I explain this in like as little words as I can? I am releasing an audio drama that is based off of the Scott Pilgrim series. It is a prequel. I've already released the musical album to it. If you guys want to buy that, it's $1 Canadian, and the money goes toward said audio drama. I've only sold one copy of it, and it was my mother, so I don't have like anything for this audio drama so far. So if you guys want to support, please do that, or at least listen to it. It's free here on YouTube to listen to, or if you can purchase it, it's $1 Canadian, or you can choose to pay more if you choose. All right, so enough with all that. Let's talk about Twilight for a second. So I was thinking, just like briefly here, I was thinking of doing, making this somewhat spoiler free as much as I can, because I know some people haven't started reading Midnight Sun because they're finishing the rest of the saga first, which is what I intended to do, and I made it to book 3 of Breaking Dawn with my husband, but we just haven't had the time, and I don't think he has really the interest to continue. So, hence why I am here doing Twilight. So why not? So I'm not sure how spoiler free I should be, but I'll do the best I can to try and be spoiler free. But then again, I read Twilight first and then I read Midnight Sun. So I think it's a little bit easier that way, if it to be spoiler free. But if I absolutely do need to say something, because I've heard some of the chapters overlap a little bit, then I will either say spoiler alert or something, or it's a little soon to be saying all these things, but is considering how we literally only read one chapter. But yeah, okay, so I'm going to stop talking because we're 5 minutes in and I haven't read a word yet. Okay, so get all cozy up and nice. Oh yeah, yes. Also, I am wearing. I don't have very many Twilight shirts here where I live now because they barely fit me, and some of them I have lost somewhere in my apartment, or a vast majority of them are at my parents' place. So I might do a video on my Twilight shirts because I have like well over 50 Twilight shirts from my good old days. People used to say I used to wear a new Twilight shirt every day. So yeah, I have a massive collection, none of which I have at all given away or anything like that or thrown out. So I have a bunch, just a matter of them fitting me is another one. So this says I run with wolves. I thought I'd wear it for Jacob's birthday. And I also have this mug. I forgot to, my mug didn't have anything special on it, but I have a mug collection. So I don't know if anyone's interested in these kind of things. I am. All right. So let's get started. 7 minutes in. I feel like these get longer and longer, these little intros. Okay. So get comfortable. All right, here we go. Chapter 2, Open Book. The next day was better and worse. It was better because it wasn't raining yet, though the clouds were dense and opaque. It was easier because I knew what to expect of my day. Mike came to sit by me in English and walked me to my next class, with chess club Eric glaring at him all the while. That was flattering. People didn't look at me quite as much as they had yesterday. I sat with a big group at lunch that included Mike, Eric, Jessica, and several other people whose names and faces I now remembered. I began to feel like I was treading water instead of drowning in it. It was worse because I was tired. I still couldn't sleep with the wind echoing around my house. It was worse because Mr. Varner called on me in trig when my hand wasn't raised and I had the wrong answer. It was miserable because I had to play volleyball, and the one time I didn't cringe out of the way of the ball, I hit my teammate in the head with it, and it was worse because Edward Cullen wasn't in school at all. The morning I was dreading lunch. All morning I was dreading lunch, fearing his bizarre glares. Part of me wanted to confront him and demand to know what his problem was, why I was lying sleeplessly, while I was lying. I apologize. While I was lying sleepless in my bed, I even imagined what I would say, but I knew myself too well to think I would really have the guts to do it. I made the cowardly lion look like the Terminator. But when I walked into the cafeteria with Jessica, trying to keep my eyes from sweeping the place for him and failing entirely, I saw that his 4 siblings of sorts were sitting together at the same table, and he was not with them. Mike intercepted us and steered us to his table. Jessica seemed elated by the attention, and her friends quickly joined us. But as I tried to listen to their easy chatter, I was terribly uncomfortable, waiting nervously for the moment he would arrive. I hoped that he would simply ignore me when he came and prove my suspicions false. He didn't come, and as time passed, I grew more and more tense. By the way, I apologize if you hear noises in the background. My cat scratching at a box in the background, so I apologize if you hear him. He's doing that right now. So he didn't come, and as time passed, I grew more and more tense. I walked to biology with more confidence when, by the end of lunch, he still hadn't showed. Mike, who was taking on the qualities of a golden retriever, walked faithfully by my side to class. I held my breath at the door, but Edward Cullen wasn't there either. I exhaled and went to my seat. Mike followed, talking about an upcoming trip to the beach. He lingered by my desk until the bell rang. Then he smiled at me wistfully and went to sit by a girl with braces and a bad perm. It looked like I was going to have to do something about Mike, and it wouldn't be easy. In a town like this, where everyone lived on top of everyone, in a town like this, where everyone lived on top of everyone else, diplomacy was essential. I had never been enormously tactful. I had no patience dealing. I had no practice dealing with overly friendly boys. I was relieved that I had the desk to myself and that Edward was absent. I told myself that repeatedly, but I couldn't get rid of the nagging suspicion that I was the reason he wasn't there. It was ridiculous and egotistical to think that I could affect anyone that strongly. It was impossible. And yet I couldn't stop worrying that it was true. When the school day was finally done and the blush was fading out of my cheeks from the volleyball incident, I changed quickly back to my jeans and navy blue sweater. I hurried from the girls' locker room, pleased to find that I had successfully evaded my retriever friend for the moment. I walked swiftly out of the parking lot. It was crowded now with fleeing students. I got in my truck and dug through my bag to make sure I had what I needed. Last night, I discovered that Charlie couldn't cook much besides fried eggs and bacon, so I requested that I be assigned to kitchen detail for the duration of my stay. He was willing enough to hand over the keys to the banquet hall. I also found out that he had no food in the house. So I had my shopping list and the cash from the jars on the cupboard labeled food money, and I was on my way to the thriftway. I gunned my deafening engine to life, ignoring the heads that turned in my direction, and backed carefully into the line of cars that were waiting to exit the parking lot. As I waited, trying to pretend that the ear-splitting rumble was coming from someone else's car, I saw the two Cullens and the Hale twins getting into their car. It was the shiny new Volvo. Of course, I hadn't noticed their clothes before. I'd been too mesmerized by their faces. Now that I looked, it was obvious that they were all dressed exceptionally well, simply, but in clothing that subtly hinted at designer origins. With their remarkable good looks, the style with which they carried themselves, they could have worn dish rags and pulled it off. It seemed excessive for them to have both looks and money, but as far as I could tell, life worked that way most of the time. It didn't look as if it bought them any acceptance here. No, I didn't fully believe that. The isolation must be their desire. I couldn't imagine any door that wouldn't be opened by that degree of beauty. They looked at my noisy truck as I passed them, just like everyone else. I kept my eyes straight forward and was relieved when I was finally free from the school grounds. The thriftway was not far from the school, just a few streets south, off the highway. It was nice to be inside of the supermarket. It felt normal. I did the shopping at home, and I fell into a pattern of the familiar task gladly. The store was big enough inside that I couldn't hear the tapping of the rain on the roof to remind me where I was. When I got home, I unloaded the groceries, stuffing them in wherever I could find an open space. I hoped Charlie wouldn't mind. I wrapped potatoes in foil and stuck them into the oven to bake. Covered a snake. I covered a snake in marinade. No, it's a steak. That was my bad. That's not a typo. We had issues with typos in Midnight Sun. This is not a typo. This is just me being stupid. Where was I? I wrapped potatoes in foil and stuck them in the oven to bake. I covered a steak in marinade and balanced it on top of a carton of eggs in the fridge. When I was finished with that, I took my book bag upstairs. Before starting my homework, I changed into a pair of dry sweats, pulled my damp hair into a ponytail, and checked my email for the first time. I had 3 messages. Bella, my mom wrote. Write me as soon as you get in. Tell me how the flight was. Is it raining? I miss you already. I'm almost finished packing for Florida, but I can't find my pink blouse. Do you know where I put it? Phil says hi. Mom. Just gonna put my Facebook on mute. I apologize about that. I sighed and went to the next. It was sent 8 hours after the first. Bella, she wrote, why haven't you emailed me yet? What are you waiting for? Mom. The last was from this morning. Isabella, if I haven't heard from you by 5:30 p.m. today, I'm calling Charlie. I checked the clock. I still had an hour, but my mom was well known for jumping the gun. Mom, calm down. I'm writing right now. Don't do anything rash. Bella. I sent that and began again. Mom, everything is great. Of course it's raining. I was waiting for something to write about. School isn't bad, just a little repetitive. I met some nice kids who sit by me at lunch. Your blouse is at the dry cleaners. You were supposed to pick it up Friday. Charlie bought me a truck. Can you believe it? I love it. It's old, but really sturdy, which is good, for me. I miss you too. I'll write again soon, but I'm not going to check my email every 5 minutes. Relax. Breathe. I love you. Bella. I had decided to read Wuthering Heights, the novel we were currently studying in English, yet again for the fun of it, and that's what I was doing when Charlie came home. I'd lost track of time, and I hurried downstairs to take the potatoes out and put the steak into broil. Bella? My father called out when he heard me on the stairs. Who else? I thought to myself. Hey, Dad. Welcome home. Thanks. He hung up his gun belt and stepped out of his boots as I bustled around the kitchen. As far as I was aware, he never shot the gun on the job, but he kept it ready. When I came here as a child, he would always remove the bullets as soon as he walked in the door. I guess he considered me old enough now not to shoot myself by accident and not depressed enough to shoot myself on purpose. This is kind of dark, but I remember reading this a long time ago, and and the podcast Remember Twilight, highly recommend that podcast, by the way. They mentioned, I wonder if Charlie started doing that again in New Moon. that is really dark, but that text itself is dark already as is. So I also want to just take a second to talk about the technology in Twilight, because this was 2005, and Renee is writing to her, and then when the film came out in 2008, Renee hadn't picked up texting until the end of the at the end of the first film, and here we are in 2021, and now you can just simply text your mom. Emailing isn't really such a thing anymore. I love to email people, but it's not really a thing anymore. So I thought that was it's really interesting. I remember when I wrote Forbidden Woods, which those of you guys who don't know, that's my own fan fiction. I integrated technology a lot more into it, and it was weird. I gave Jacob an email address. I gave him a phone, and Jacob doesn't have a phone except for the home phone and stuff. So I thought that was really funny that I was integrating that. And even with the stuff that I'm writing now for Forbidden Woods, they have Netflix, which was not a thing at the time, or even 10 years ago when I started writing it. So I just wanted to take a second to talk about that, just because I think that's really interesting of how far we have come since 2005 and even 2010. So, or 2011, pretty much. So I just wanted to take a second and just have a little appreciation moment for that. What's for dinner? He asked warily. My mother was an imaginative cook, and her experiments weren't always edible. I was surprised and sad that he seemed to remember that far back. Steak and potatoes, I answered, and he looked relieved. He seemed to feel awkward standing in the kitchen doing nothing. He lumbered into the living room to watch TV while I worked. We were both comfortable that way. I made a salad while the steaks cooked and set the table. I called him in when dinner was ready, and he sniffed appreciatively as he walked into the room. Smells good, Bells. Thanks. We ate in silence for a few minutes. It wasn't uncomfortable. Neither of us was bothered by the quiet. In some ways, we were well suited for living together. So, Did you like school? Have you made any friends? He asked as he was taking seconds. Well, I have a few classes with a girl named Jessica. I sit with her friends at lunch. And there's this boy, Mike, who's very friendly. Everybody seems pretty nice, with one outstanding exception. She didn't mention Angela. Can we talk about that for a second? That must be Mike Newton. Nice kid. Nice family. His dad owns the sporting goods store just outside of town. He makes a good living off of all the backpackers who come through here. Do you know the Cullen family? I asked hesitantly. Dr. Cullen's family? Sure. Dr. Cullen's a great man. They the kids are a little different. They don't seem to fit in very well at school. Charlie seemed Charlie surprised me by looking angry. People in this town, he muttered. Dr. Cullen is a brilliant surgeon who could probably work in any hospital in the world, make 10 times the salary he gets here. He continued, getting louder. We're lucky to have him, lucky that his wife wanted to live in a small town. He's an asset to the community, and all those kids are well behaved and polite. I had my doubts, but when they first moved in, with all those adopted teenagers, I thought we might have some problems with them. But they're all very mature. I haven't had one speck of trouble from any of them. That's more than I could say for the children of some folks who have lived in this town for generations. And they stick together the way a family should. Camping trips every other weekend, just because they're newcomers, people have to talk. It was the longest speech I'd ever heard Charlie make. He must feel strongly about whatever people were saying. I backpedaled. They seem nice enough to me. I just noticed they kept to themselves. They're all very attractive, I added, trying to be more complimentary. You should see the doctor, Charlie said, laughing. It's a good thing he's happily married. A lot of the nurses at the hospital have a hard time concentrating on their work with him around. Charlie totally has a crush on Carlisle. I'm sure in the gender bent version he probably does too, but I don't remember if Charlie is with Sue at that point, or at least in the gender bent version, which is called Life and Death, if you are not aware of that piece of work. A lot of people say like they can't really get through it, and I had a difficult time. I listened to the audiobook for it. It's interesting, but there's a twist ending to it. So I think it's worth reading, or at least listening to the audiobook just for that. If you guys want me to read that book, then, let me know. And I will do that at some point. Where are we? Okay, here we are. We lapsed back into silence after we finished eating. As we finished eating, he cleared the table where I started on the dishes. He went back to the TV, and after I finished washing all the dishes by hand, no dishwasher, I went upstairs willingly to work on my math homework. I could feel a tradition in the making. That night, it was finally quiet. I fell asleep quickly, exhausted. The rest of the week was uneventful. I got used to the routine of my classes. By Friday, I was able to recognize, if not name, all the other students in school. In gym, the kids on my team learned not to pass me the ball and to quickly step in front of me if the other team tried to take advantage of my weakness. I happily stayed out of their way. Edward Cullen didn't come back to school. The end. Can you imagine? Every day, I watched anxiously until the rest of the Cullens entered the cafeteria without him. Then I could relax and enjoy in the lunchtime conversation. Mostly, it centered around the trip to the La Push I apologize. To the La Push Ocean Park in 2 weeks that Mike was putting together. I was invited, and I had agreed to go, more out of politeness than the desire. Beaches should be hot and dry. I went to La Push Beach years ago in 2010. It's a beautiful beach. Highly recommend it. Beaches should be hot and dry. Yes, but I think La Push is probably like the best beach I've ever been to. Then again, I don't like sand. There's a lot of rocks. So at least that gets less in your way than sand. I don't like sand. All right, let's continue. By Friday, I was perfectly comfortable entering my biology class. No longer worried that Edward would be there. For all I knew, he had dropped out of school. I tried not to think about him, but I couldn't totally suppress the worry that I was responsible for his continued absence, ridiculous as it seemed. My first weekend in Forks passed without incident. Charlie, unused to spending time in the usually empty house, worked most of the weekend. I cleaned the house, got ahead on my homework, wrote to my mom more bogusly cheerful email. I did drive to the library Saturday, but it was so poorly stocked that I didn't bother to get a card. I would have to make a date visit to visit Olympia or Seattle soon to find a good bookstore. I wondered idly what kind of gas mileage the truck got, and shuddered at the thought. The rain stayed soft over the weekend, quiet, so I was able to sleep well. People greeted me in the parking lot Monday morning. I didn't know all their names, but I waved back and smiled at everyone. It was colder this morning, but happily not raining. In English, Mike took his accustomed seat by my side. We had a pop quiz on Wuthering Heights. It was straightforward, very easy. Bella brag. All in all, I was feeling a lot more comfortable than I had thought I would feel at this point. More comfortable than I'd ever expected to feel here. When we walked out of class, the air was full of swirling bits of white. I could hear people shouting excitedly to each other. The wind bit at my cheeks, my nose. Wow, Mike said. It's snowing. I looked at the little cotton fluffs that were building up along the sidewalk and swirling erratically past my face. Ew. Snow. There went my good day. He looked surprised. You don't like the snow? No. That means it's too cold for rain, obviously. Besides, I thought it was supposed to come down in flakes. You know, each one unique and all that. This looks more like the ends of Q-tips. Haven't you ever seen snowfall before? He asked incredulously. Sure I have. I paused. On TV. Mike laughed, and then a big squishy ball of dripping snow smacked into the back of his head. We both turned to see where it came from. I had my suspicions about Eric. Who was walking away, his back toward us, in the wrong direction for his next class. Mike apparently had the same notion. He bent over and began scraping together a pile of the white mush. I would not have picked up on that as fast as Bella did, or Mike did. I'd be like, wait, you're going in the wrong direction. I'd be like, I don't even remember, like, totally what your schedule is. I'd be like, okay, maybe you're taking the long way, and then, wait a second. I would be very slow with that. I'll see you at lunch, okay? I kept walking as I spoke. Once people start throwing wet stuff, I go inside. He just nodded, his eyes on Eric's retreating figure. Throughout the morning, everyone chattered excitedly about the snow. Apparently, it was the first snowfall of the new year. I kept my mouth shut. We don't care about that here in Canada, or at least I don't. The first snowfall of the new year, woohoo! It's like, no, go away. we just want the warm weather, which unfortunately we have right now, but that's global warming and whatever not. Or at least where I live. I kept my mouth shut. I'm sure it was drier than rain until it melted in your socks. God, that is such a mood. I walked alertly to the cafeteria with Jessica after Spanish. Mush balls were flying everywhere. I kept a binder in my hands, ready to use it as a shield if necessary. Jessica thought it was hilarious, but something in my expression kept her from lobbing a snowball at me herself. Mike caught up to us as we walked in the doors, laughing with ice melting the spikes in his hair. He and Jessica were talking animatedly about the snow fight we got in. About the snow fight as we got in line to buy food. I glanced toward the table in the corner out of habit, and then I froze where I stood. There was 5 people at the table. Jessica pulled on my arm. Hello? Bella, what do you want? I looked down. My ears were hot. I had no reason to feel self-conscious, I reminded myself. I hadn't done anything wrong. What's with Bella? Mike asked Jessica. Nothing, I answered. I'll just get a soda today. I caught up at the end of the line. Aren't you hungry? Jessica asked. Actually, I feel a little sick, I said, my eyes still on the floor. I waited for them to get their food and then followed them to a table, my eyes on my feet. I sipped my soda slowly, my stomach churning. Twice Mike asked with unnecessary concern how I was feeling. I told him it was nothing, but I was wondering if I should play it up and escape to the nurse's office in the next hour. Ridiculous. I shouldn't have to run away. I decided to permit myself one glance at the Cullen family table if he was glaring at me. I, if he was glaring at me, I would skip biology, like the coward I was. I kept my head down and glanced up at under my lashes. None of them were looking this way. I lifted my head up a little. They were laughing. Edward, Jasper, and Emmett all had their hair entirely saturated with melting snow. Alice and Rosalie were leaning away as Emmett shook his dripping hair toward them. They were enjoying the snowy day, just like everyone else, only they looked more like a scene from a movie than the rest of us. But aside from the laughter and playfulness, there was something different, and I couldn't quite pinpoint what that difference was. I examined Edward the most carefully. His skin was less pale, I decided, flushed with the snow maybe, from the snow fight maybe. The circles under his eyes much less noticeable, but there was something more. I pondered, staring, trying to isolate the change. Bella, what are you staring at? Jessica intruded, her eyes following my stare. At the precise moment his eyes flashed over to meet mine, I dropped my head, letting my hair fall to conceal my face. I was sure, though, in that instant our eyes met, that he didn't look harsh or unfriendly as he had the last time I'd seen him. He looked merely curious again, unsatisfied in some way. Edward Cullen is staring at you, Jessica giggled in my ear. He doesn't look angry, does he? I couldn't help asking. No, she said, sounded confused by my question. Should he be? I don't think he likes me, I confided. I still felt queasy. I put my head down on my arm. The Cullens don't like anybody. Well, they don't notice anybody enough not to, sorry. The Cullens don't like anybody. Well, they don't notice anybody enough to like them. But he's still staring at you. Stop looking at him, I hissed. She snickered, but she looked away. I raised my head enough to make sure that she did, contemplating violence if she resisted. Mike interrupted us then. He was planning on an epic battle of the blizzard in the parking lot after school and wanted us to join. Jessica agreed enthusiastically. The way she looked at Mike left little doubt that she would be up for anything he suggested. I kept silent. I would have to hide in the gym until the parking lot cleared. For the rest of the lunch hour, I very carefully kept my eyes at my own table. I decided to honor the bargain I had made with myself. Since he didn't look angry, I would go to biology. My stomach did frightened little flips at the thought of sitting next to him again. I didn't really want to walk to class with Mike, as usual. He seemed to be a popular target for the snowball snipers. But when we went to the door, everyone besides me groaned in unison. It was raining, washing all traces of the snow away in clear, icy ribbons down the side of the walkway. I pulled my hood up, secretly pleased. I would be free to go straight home after gym. Mike kept up a string of complaints on the way to building 4. Once inside the classroom, I saw with relief that my table was still empty. Mr. Banner was walking around the room, distributing one microscope and box of slides to each table. Class didn't start for a few minutes, and the room buzzed with conversation. I kept my eyes away from the door, doodling idly on the cover of my notebook. I heard very clearly when the chair next to me moved, but my eyes stayed carefully focused on the pattern I was drawing. Hello? Said a quiet, musical voice. I looked up, stunned that he was speaking to me. He was sitting as far away from me as the desk allowed, but his chair was angled toward me. His hair was dripping wet, disheveled. Even so, he looked like he had just finished shooting a commercial for hair gel. His dazzling face was friendly, open, a slight smile on his flawless lips, but his eyes were careful. My name is Edward Cullen, he continued. I didn't have a chance to introduce myself last week. You must be Bella Swan. My mind was spinning with confusion. Had I made up the whole thing? He was perfectly polite now. I had to speak. He was waiting, but I couldn't think of anything conventional to say. How do you know my name? I stammered. He laughed, a soft, enchanting laugh. Oh, I think everyone knows your name. The whole town's been waiting for you to arrive. I grimaced. I knew it was something like that. No, I persisted stupidly. I meant, why did you call me Bella? He seemed confused. Do you prefer Isabella? No, I like Bella, I said. But I think my dad, must call me Isabella behind my back. That's what everyone here seems to know me as. I tried to explain, feeling like an utter moron. Oh, he let it drop. I looked away awkwardly. Thankfully, Mr. Banner started class at that moment. I tried to concentrate as he explained the lab that we would be doing today. The slides in the box were out of order. As lab partners, we had to separate the slides of the onion root tip cells into the phases of mitosis they represented and label them accordingly. We weren't supposed to use our books. In 20 minutes, he would be coming around to see who had got it right. I just want to take a second and talk about something that is kind of hilarious, but also like really adorable. Um, it's just a personal story. With everything like the onion root tip cells. I remember when I was in my grade 10 science class. I was in class, and our teacher asked like, what where have you heard the words prophase, anaphase, as and et cetera, et cetera. And I remember I said I heard it from Twilight, and she's just like, oh, I guess Twilight's educational. And then about a year later, I met this girl, and she is now my best friend. And we happened to be in that same class together, and she remembered that I had mentioned that I knew the phases of an onion skin from Twilight. And if you look on my Instagram, there is on my wedding video, it's mentioned that Natasha knew that. So I just wanted to bring that up. Like, she knew this. She remembered me because of Twilight, and I just wanted to say that little tidbit there for a second, because I think that's really cute, and I think that's an adorable story, even though it's mine and Natasha's. So, but yeah, Natasha's my best friend, and she has been for, yeah, it's about 7 years now. So I've been best friends with her as long as I've been with my husband. So I mean, I've known my husband longer, but I just wanted to bring that up. Twilight brought us together. Well, fan fiction brought us together too, but yeah. All right. Took a little drink. Let's get started. That's literally the next term. Get started, he commanded. All right. I don't think I've come up with a voice for Mr. Banner, so let's figure this out. Get started, he commanded. Ladies first, partner? Edward asked. I looked up to see him smiling a crooked smile so beautiful that I could only stare at him like an idiot. Or I could start, if you wish. The smile faded. He was obviously wondering if if I was mentally competent. No, I said, flushing. I'll go ahead. I was showing off, just a little. I'd already done this lab, and I knew I knew what I was looking for. It should be easy. I snapped the first slide into place under my microscope and adjusted it quickly to the 40-time objective. I studied the slide briefly. My assessment was confident. Prophase. Do you mind if I check? Do you mind if I look? He asked as I began to remove the slide. His hand caught mine to stop me as he asked. His fingers were ice cold, like he'd been holding them in a snowdrift before class. But that wasn't why I jerked my hand away so quickly. When he touched me, it stung my hands, as if an electric current had passed through us. I'm sorry, he muttered, pulling his hand back immediately. However, he continued to reach for the microscope. I watched him, still staggering as he examined the slide for an even shorter time than I had. Prophase, he agreed, writing it neatly in the first space on the worksheet. He swiftly switched out the first slide for the second, and then glanced at it curiously. Anaphase, he murmured, writing it down as he spoke. I kept my voice indifferent. May I? He smirked and pushed the microscope to me. I looked through the eyepiece eagerly, only to be disappointed. Dang it. He was right. Slide 3. I held up my hand without looking at him. I wonder if Edward could actually read Bella's mind, if he actually would have, like, pretended he didn't know, but maybe then again, he likes to brag. I mean, no, I'm not gonna say anything about but I will say he has medical degrees, so well, not medical. He does have medical degrees, but he has other degrees, like science degrees. I don't know. I don't know anything about degrees. So all right, let's continue. Slide 3. I held up my hand without looking at him. He handed it to me. It seemed like he was being careful not to touch my skin again. I'm excited to see what he says about that. I took the most fleeting look I could manage. Interface. I passed him the microscope before he could ask for it. He took a swift peek and then wrote it down. I would have written it while he looked, but his clear, elegant script intimidated me. I didn't want to spoil the page with my clumsy scrawl. We were finished before anyone else was close. I could see Mike and his partner were comparing 2 slides again and again, and another group had their book open under the table, which left me with nothing to do but to try and not look at him, unsuccessfully. I glanced up and he was staring at me, the same inexplicable look of frustration in his eyes. Suddenly, I identified the subtle differences in his face. "Did you get contacts?" I blurted out unthinkingly. He seemed puzzled by my unexpected question. "No." "Oh," I mumbled. "I thought there was something different about your eyes." He shrugged and looked away. It's funny that if he had just said, "Yeah," then that could have been the end of the conversation. But no. It's just like, "No, I didn't get contacts. The fluorescence." I don't think that's in this book, but he shrugged and looked away. In fact, I was sure there was something different. I vividly remembered the flat black color of his eyes the last time he'd glared at me. The color was striking against the background of his pale skin and his auburn hair. Today, his eyes were a completely different color, a strange ochre, darker than butterscotch, but with the same golden tone. I didn't understand how that could be unless he was lying for some reason about the contacts. Or maybe Forks was making me crazy in the literal sense of the word. I looked down. His hands were clenched to hard fists again. Mr. Banner came to our table then, to see why we weren't working. He looked over our shoulders to glance at the completed lab and then stared more intently to check the answers. I don't know about you guys, but like when I was in school, if I finished something before everyone else, I'd be like, "I'm done. What do I do now?" But I guess not Bella and Edward. "So, Edward, didn't you think Isabella should get a chance with the microscope?" Mr. Banner asked. "Bella," Edward corrected automatically. "Actually, she identified three of the 5. Mr. Banner looked at me now. His expression was skeptical. "Have you done this lab before?" he asked. I smiled sheepishly. "Not with onion root." Whitefish, whitefish blastula? "Yeah." Mr. Banner nodded. "Were you in an advanced placement program in Phoenix?" "Yes." "Well," he said after a moment, "I guess it's good you two are lab partners." He mumbled something else as he walked away. I can't wait to see what that is, too. After he left, I began doodling on my notebook again. "It's too bad about the snow, isn't it?" Edward asked. I had a feeling that he was forcing himself to make small talk with me. Paranoia swept over me again. It was like he had heard my conversation with Jessica at lunch and was trying to prove me wrong. "Not really," I answered honestly instead of pretending to be normal like everyone else. I was still trying to dislodge the stupid feeling of suspicion, and I couldn't concentrate. "You don't like the cold?" It wasn't a question. "Or the wet." "Forest must be a different place for you to live," he mused. "You have no idea," I muttered darkly. He looked fascinated by what I said for some reason I couldn't imagine. His face was such a distraction that I tried to look at it any more. That I tried not to look at it any more than than wait than Cortis. Sometimes there are words that I cannot read. Sometimes courtesy, yeah. So that is courtesy. I try not to look at it any more than courtesy absolutely demanded. So that is the right word. So sometimes I read a little bit ahead and I'm like, wait, that doesn't sound like the right word. So, okay. Why did you come here then? No one had asked me that. Not straight out like he did, demanding. It's complicated. I think I can keep up, he pressed. I paused for a long moment and then I made the mistake of meeting his gaze. His dark gold eyes confused me, and I answered without thinking. My mother got remarried, I said. That doesn't sound so complex. He disagreed, but he was suddenly sympathetic. When did that happen? Last September. My voice sounded sad, even to me. And you don't like him, Edward surmised, his tone still kind. No, Phil is fine. Too young, maybe, but nice enough. Why didn't you stay with them? I couldn't fathom his interest, but he continued to stare at me with penetrating eyes as if my dull life story was somehow vitally important. Phil travels a lot. He plays ball for a living. I half smiled. Have I heard of him? He asked, smiling in response. Probably not. He doesn't play well. Strictly minor league. He moves around a lot. And your mother sent you here so that she could travel with him. He said it as an assumption again, not a question. My chin raised a fraction. No, she did not send me here. I sent myself. His eyebrows knitted together. I don't understand, he admitted, and he seemed unnecessarily frustrated by that fact. I sighed. Why was I explaining this to him? He continued to stare at me with obvious curiosity. She stayed with me at first, but she missed him. It made her unhappy. So I decided that it was time to spend some quality time with Charlie. My voice was glum by the time I finished. But now you're unhappy, he pointed out. And? I challenged. That doesn't seem fair. He shrugged, but his eyes were still intense. I laughed without humor. Hasn't anyone ever told you life isn't fair? I believe I have heard that somewhere, he agreed dryly. So that's all, I insisted, wondering why he was still staring at me that way. His gaze became appraising. You put on a good show, he said slowly, but I'd be willing to bet that you're suffering more than you let anyone else see. I grimaced at him, resting my impulse to stick out my tongue like a 5-year-old and looked away. Am I wrong? I tried to ignore him. I don't think so. Wait, I don't think so, he murmured smugly. Why does it matter to you? I asked, irritated. I kept my eyes away, watching the teacher make its rounds. That's a very good question, he muttered so quietly that I wondered if he was talking to himself. However, after a few seconds of silence, I decided that was the only answer I was going to get. I sighed, scowling at the blackboard. Am I annoying you? He asked. He sounded amused. I glanced at him without thinking, and I told the truth again. Not exactly. I'm more annoyed at myself. My face is so easy to read. My mother always called me her open book. I frowned. On the contrary, I find you very difficult to read. Despite everything that I'd said and he'd guessed, he sounded like he meant it. You must be a good reader, then, I replied. Usually. He smiled widely, flashing a set of perfect ultra-white teeth. Mr. Banner called the class to order then, and I turned with relief to listen. I was in disbelief that I'd just explained my dreary life to this bizarre, beautiful boy who may or may not despise me. He seemed engrossed in our conversation, but now I could see from the corner of my eye that he was just leaning away from me again, his hands gripping the edge of the table with unmistakable tension. He tried to appear attentive to Mr. Banner's illustrated and transparencies on the overhead projector, what I had seen without difficulty through the microscope, but my thoughts were unmanageable. When the bell finally rang, Edward rushed as swiftly and as gracefully from the room as he had last Monday. And, like last Monday, I stared at him in amazement. Mike skipped quickly to my side, picked up my books for me. I imagined him with a wagging tail. That was awful, he groaned. They all looked exactly the same. You're lucky you had Cullen for a partner. I didn't have any trouble with it, I said, stung by his assumption. I regretted the snub instantly. I've done the lab before, though. Excuse me. I'm sorry if that was loud on you guys' end. I just really had to sneeze. Okay. I've done the lab before, though. I added before he could get his feelings hurt. Cullen seemed friendly enough today, he complimented as we shrugged into our raincoats. He didn't seem pleased about it. I tried to sound indifferent. I wonder what was up with him last Monday. I couldn't concentrate on Mike's chatter as we walked into the gym, and PE didn't do much to hold my attention either. Mike was on my team today. I hate this word. Chivalrously. I'm sorry. I struggle to say this word. Chivalrously. Covered my position as well as his own, so my wool gathering was only interrupted when it was my turn to serve. My team ducked warily out of the way every time I was up. The rain was just a mist, and I walked to the parking lot, but I was happier when I was in a dry cab. I got the heater running, for once not caring about the mind-numbing roar of the engine. I unzipped my jacket and put the hood down and fluffed my damp hair out so the heater could dry it on the way home. I looked around me to make sure that it was clear. That was when I noticed the still, white figure. Edward Cullen was leaning against the front door of the Volvo, 3 cars down from me, and staring intently in my direction. I swiftly looked away and threw the truck into reverse, almost hitting a rusty Toyota Corolla in my haste. Lucky for the Toyota, I stomped on the brake in time. It was just the sort of car that my truck would make scrap metal out of. I took a deep breath, still looking at this other side of the car, and cautiously pulled out again, with greater success. I stared straight ahead as I passed the Volvo, but from a peripheral peak, I could swear I saw him laughing. And that is it for that chapter. Woohoo! All right, so thank you guys so much for joining me today. And once again, happy birthday to Jacob Black, my favorite character and my fictional husband. So, let's see. Was there anything else I wanted to talk about? Yeah, the thing with technology. I'm excited to see what Edward has to say about everything that's going on. Just the little things about what he's doing that I never really questioned too much in reading Twilight originally. But now, like, there are little reasons behind Edward's like every move. I mean, because Stephenie Meyer doesn't have really a choice but to mention them, or like explain, I guess, why he's doing them, or it could be like just a simple breath. I don't know. So thank you so much again for joining me today in reading Twilight. Next time we will be reading Midnight Sun. I haven't chosen a date yet because I like to read these books and record things when my husband isn't around, just because otherwise I get distracted, and and he likes attention. So then he'll like try to interject himself here and there. Yeah, so I just prefer to read by myself. I'm surprised I'm recording less than I did for the first chapter. That was a little over an hour. Same with Midnight Sun. That was a bit over an hour. So I'm under an hour today. So that's really interesting. So what else do I have to say? Yeah, so I will post on my social media when I will be streaming next, as well as here on this channel. I have been scheduling them so that people can be notified as soon as I figure out a time and a date for when I'm reading each one. So also, I don't have any members for it yet, but I said yesterday that I opened a group. I don't have any technical stuff with it quite yet, like with like rules and things like that yet. So, but I will put the link down below for you guys to check out. And I just think that's just an easier way for people to get notified when I am reading these books. Yeah, thank you guys so much for joining me. And I will see you guys soon for Midnight Sun Chapter 2. And I really hope that they're in conjunction with each other, but I guess we'll see, because I don't want to be reading way ahead in Twilight, like say we're already in the Port Angeles scene while Edward hasn't even made it there yet, because I was just thinking of that while we were reading. So, but we're doing chapter by chapter, so that we'll see what happens there. If you have any suggestions, comments, questions, concerns, let me know. I will 1000% respond to you. And I think that's all I have to say for tonight. I hope you guys are doing well, and I hope you guys are staying home as much as possible. We just got a stay-at-home order, like that it came into effect today, but there it was like literally the same thing as the last order, just saying. So it's just like a little stricter now, which is still nice. So yeah, that's it. That's all I have to say. Also, make sure you guys subscribe, click the notification bell so you guys can be notified, and check out my other videos or Midnight Sun or whatever you guys want. I'm not the bossy. You can do whatever you want. Okay, so once again, happy birthday, Jacob Black. Best character in the series, next to Charlie and a bunch of other characters, which we love. Tell me who's your favorite character. How about that? All right. I will talk to you guys later, and I will see you soon. Keep calm and sparkle on. Stay safe. Wear your mask over your nose, and yeah, that's it. Just have a good time. All right.